photography chat live stream where we talk about photography and come together as a community, see how everybody's doing. I hope you're all doing well. I'm doing well, thank you. And today's topic, I wanted to kind of cover something that was brought up in last week's stream, and I touched on it, I guess, a little there, but it was really just kind of my own thoughts. I wanted to get a more of a consensus from the community about what you're looking for OM systems to do next, what improvements or changes you'd like to see. And I focus primarily on the camera bodies. We all want more lenses, as always, but I wanted to focus on the cameras, whether it's the technology or the features or uh, maybe expanding the lineup. And so I put a poll out, uh, the next day, asking, the best I could, what you guys wanted to see next. And let me pull that poll up real quick so we can see the numbers. And I also put a poll in today's stream as well that you can address and see what the results are from the people actually just viewing the stream today, which probably there's going to be a lot of overlap. So it's okay to vote twice if you voted in the previous one, and go ahead and vote again today in today's stream. But let me pull up the post from last week and share with you just sort of the consensus. Uh, oh, seriously? Sorry, one second. I had it pulled up and then I closed the window for some reason. Okay. Um, so let's see, one of these buttons do it, right? So it's this one here. And let me just expand that out so it's easier to read. So I asked, what do you think is the most important next step for home system cameras? Please elaborate your choice in the comments. So I got a lot of great feedback as well, and I'm going to cover some of those. But the question that was raised basically last week in the stream was, how many people would like to see a 24 megapixel or higher stack sensor? And, we kind of went back and forth a little bit last week, but I wanted to just get some, harder numbers here in a poll. And it was kind of interesting. So the choices were 24 megapixel or higher stack sensor, 35%, new computational features or image quality improvements like ISO, dynamic range, and I've also added autofocus to that, 35% again, and then expand the range of cameras to models like the Pen or the OM10 or whatever else they're going to make, 24%. And then I added this one about focusing on niche cameras like the OM1X and the Pen F, because these are kind of halo cameras. I guess a niche camera they recently uh, produced was the OM3, and it did quite well, I think, for OM systems. I don't have any hard data to back that up, but that's just kind of the feeling I get. I didn't see really any negative reviews on that camera. Uh, and the consensus online, at least with the influencers and creators online, was very, very positive. So that's why I added this question. I was curious if, we could go to an OM1X or maybe a Pen F. And if you're not familiar with those cameras, the OM1X is a double grip, full size sort of camera, and the Pen F being sort of a rangefinder style uh, camera, which it's been basically abandoned at this point. I believe both have been abandoned, in my opinion, but that only came in at 6%. Uh, for today's poll, it's pretty much the same questions about, higher resolution, more computational features, expanding the range to include the OM1X and PenF. Uh, so, chime in there if you like and see what the current things are. But I thought this was kind of interesting. It shows how split we are on what we want next. And granted, we are kind of in a bubble here of photographers. Most of us are probably already OM system camera shooters. So this is not going to be representative, I think, of what would drive new business, right? And new customers to the brand. this is really probably very skewed towards what existing users want to see. At least that's my take on it. And we had 307 votes, so it's yeah, excuse me, it's not an insignificant number, but it's not a large number. Statistically speaking, you like to typically get about 1,000 votes to where you get some statistical sort of significance, right? But that said, even with this small sample, 307, it was interesting to see how split we are because it's basically a third of us want higher resolution, a third of us just want more improvements in image quality and computational features, and the other third want to see new camera models. And even if, and it's implied that these new cameras will have the same current 20 megapixel sensor. So that was the data. So before I get into sort of the comments on this poll, let me just go back to the chat section. I need to arrange my papers here. I did try to organize or prep a little bit for the thing, but I see Henning's here. Good to see you. And Henning says, I missed an important point on the wish list, OM123 with monochrome. Yeah, that would be sort of a niche camera, right? So in today's question, I didn't ask about niche cameras. I just about asked about new camera models. So uh, going monochrome would be very, very niche because really there's only Pentax and Leica doing that right now. Canon, Nikon, Sony, uh, and whoever else are not doing that at all. So it'd be interesting to see monochrome micro four thirds. And I see Jeff's here. Plato, good to see you. And Anthony, good to see you. And Anthony was the one that brought up the question and brings it up quite often. Actually, we go back and forth in emails, and I see you in other streams participating in this direction. And Anthony is an avid OM system user as well, right? So that's what I mean. I think a lot of us are fans of the brand in general. So that's why this particular poll, I think, is in a bubble, right? It's not what the general population of new camera buyers might be looking for. And Thomas, good to see you, and William and Plato, and um, yeah, it's so good to see everyone here. Darko, good to see you, Roger. Excuse me. My voice will be clear very soon. Uh, and William points out that they do have monochrome, just not raw file. But we're talking about strictly a monochrome sensor where there's no like Bayer array on top, obviously. So for those of you that aren't familiar with sensors or the technology, uh, basically there's a color array filter on top of a monochrome sensor because sensors can only detect black and white, basically. So they put color filters on top and then convert that into a color image for us. And a monochrome sensor just eliminates that filter, so it just picks up everything directly. And I can tell you that after shooting a true monochrome camera, like I have a Pentax monochrome, there is a difference. There is a difference in the tonality. And I can really appreciate why people would want a black and white or monochrome sensor. Okay. That said, um, being split basically across the board here, I think implies that some of us feel like sensor technology is kind of plateaued, at least for CMOS, right? Uh, there is the new global shutter from Sony, of course, and Canon also announced a 400 megapixel full frame sensor for whatever purpose. But the current consumer market or prosumer has pretty much plateaued, I think. And I think that's also a general consensus, right? we're not seeing leaps and bounds of improvements, I'd say, even over the last, certainly over the last 5 years, but even over the last 10 years in terms of image quality, dynamic range, color fidelity, bit depth and all of that, we've kind of plateaued. Uh, because I can take any camera from the last 10 or 12 years, and I do. Like, I have my Pentax K3 from 2013. Well, takes great pictures. There's been huge improvements in autofocus since then, especially with going mirrorless. But the sensor itself, I'm not seeing a huge difference in just general everyday consumer photo walks, things like that. Minor differences in color science and things like that, which are easily corrected in post-processing. But we've kind of plateaued. So I feel like the people that are looking for either expanding the cameras lineup to pens and whatever else, OM1X, OM10, an entry-level model, that's kind of the camp we're in. And that's almost a third of us. The other third are looking for not necessarily new cameras. You like the cameras that are available, in terms of the style, M3, OM1, OM5. These are all basically DSLR style cameras, but you want to see improvements in computational features and image quality, like ISO and dynamic range. You don't necessarily need more megapixels. And I'm kind of in that camp myself, so count me on that side. And then there's the other third that want to see more resolution, with the implication that there may not necessarily be an improvement in dynamic range or ISO performance, but just primarily in the resolution and how much we can resolve in detail from our images. Uh, Ideally without any compromises in dynamic range and image quality. So I, you know, I think another general consensus is that people do not really necessarily need more megapixels, right? But the reason for adding more megapixels is to stay competitive with other higher megapixel cameras. Panasonic, I mean, I'm not, I didn't forget about Panasonic released a 25 megapixel sensor, give or take, but uh, I can definitely see a difference in dynamic range and noise going from 20 to 25 megapixels because we're working with a smaller pixel pitch, and invariably it's going to have a little bit less of each. Whether that makes a difference in real life and practice is irrelevant. We're talking about strictly just from a technical standpoint, the smaller your pixel pitch, less dynamic range, and higher noise you're going to have because the signal to noise ratio is going to be even tighter, which I talked about last week, so I won't go into it again. Uh, but if they can make some improvements to increase the resolution without affecting the current dynamic range and noise levels, and I think Panasonic has done that for the most part, I'd be happy with that. All they have to do is go to 24 megapixels, 25, whatever, and make it stacked. Stacking, some would argue, does take away some of the dynamic range, but we're so close to sort of I think, maximum dynamic range we can achieve anyway, given the pixel pitches we're working with. Okay, uh, but that's how I read the data, right? Is we're so evenly split, and there's some of us that want it all, right? We want to see more cameras, more resolution, better dynamic range. Something I haven't talked about more is the computational features. I think we can definitely use more computational features and get better autofocusing performance. Those things I think will come. So I wouldn't I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think those things are going to come. The sooner the better. Like for example, I'd like to see them combine ND filter and grad ND into a single, uh, function, and then add on top of that a layer of high-res shot mode. So if high-res shot mode, grad ND, live ND all combined, because they all use basically the same idea of stacking multiple images together. And the only thing holding it back is the processing power, right? Because it can certainly be done, I think, from a technical standpoint, but not in a way that would, uh, be usable in the field, right? It might take, who's going to wait 5, 10 minutes before they can take another picture, right? That said, it's easy enough to do these things the traditional way by using a real ND filter and a real graduated ND filter, and not have to do it in camera. But I just wanted to shout out, or give an example of something I think can eventually come. Other computational features, you know, let your imagination run wild, right? Combine or create new computational features altogether. Uh, I think those will come, you know, and if they had a much bigger R&D department, they would come faster, or sooner than later. But I think they'll come, and it'd be nice if they could do them in firmware updates to previous camera models. Uh, so that's that. But let me get some feedback from you guys in the comments section. If you think my overall analysis is, you know, generally we're there, if you guys agree with that or not, or if you have some very strong disagreements with what I said, that's fine too, right? But yeah, I think a lot of people feel like 20 megapixels is enough, and they don't want to risk adding noise or reducing the dynamic range by adding megapixels. They don't want that compromise. That's kind of the general sense I get. Uh, but if you can take the 20 megapixels and increase the dynamic range and ISO performance of just 20 megapixels, I think that would be very, very desirable. I will take that any day over increasing megapixels, increasing dynamic range, and uh, lowering the noise. So those are the things. The stack sensor part, I think, is also very critical, and that has more to do with OM Systems' culture of sports action wildlife. Birding, bird is huge with the OM System culture and user base, and having a stack sensor makes a huge difference in minimizing the rolling shutter. You being able to shoot at 50 frames per second without rolling shutter and tracking and all of that. Uh, so if they could expand on that, I think that would be my favorite thing to do. If that's possible. I don't know if we've hit a limit there as well. Possibly we have, because when I compare sensors of comparable pixel pitch across the brands, across sensor size, APS-C versus uh, full frame, when you get the pixel pitch about the same in a modern sensor, they're all really producing roughly the same dynamic range and noise performance. Okay, let me check the chat section, and then we'll talk about the computational features. But I do want to expand on that a little bit. So I'll expand on the computational features next. Okay, so Shakave is here. Good to see you. And Elias says, why not? The direction is obvious. We need more clear, less noisy picture with more resolution and more dynamic range. So all of the above, basically, right? In terms of the sensor technology. And Seraphim, I think he's joking, but 1000 megapixel high res shot mode. I guess that could be feasibly possible, but we'll see. Why not? Why not? Instead of shifting 1 pixel over, shift over 2 pixels or 3 pixels. You'd have to shift uh probably 20, 25 pixels, in any direction, which I think they have that wiggle room with the stabilization system. And Sony's supposedly working on a new triple layer sensor. No word on time frame. Oh, that kind of I haven't read about that. That kind of reminds me of the Fovean sensor, though, right? Because that was a triple layer sensor. It had a red, green, and blue layer, each one sensitive to a specific wavelength of light, and then they stack those together, in camera. That would be interesting. And Apple's new M chips, very powerful, very efficient, and with the use of electricity linking battery life, I think 2 years there's been lots of improvements with processor technology. Yes. The question is, the fabrication plants I would imagine are very different in producing processors versus processors in camera. And that I think that's a huge, huge ask. And processors in laptops and things have access to a much, much higher battery capacity in terms of uh, amps. So I get it. The M processors don't require much, but you figure our batteries are delivering what, 7 or 8 volts at how many watts? Our camera's probably running at about 5 watts. I think an M processor probably runs probably closer to 25 watts. I'm curious. Granted, it does a lot more, but let's not go there. Let's not go there. It's a little bit beyond, I think, the scope of what I wanted to get into today. But yeah, it's a huge difference in manufacturing and in application. Uh, processing processing on a camera is, more of a dedicated process versus a multi-purpose processor that has to do a lot. An updated TG7 with a new sensor, that would be awesome because that's been, I think, at least since the TG5, they've been running that 12 megapixel sensor, which is great. But I think the TG7 could really do with a new lens design as well. Um, it does a great job overall, but just improving the lens alone would make a big difference, I think. Maybe not going to a fixed lens, but maybe something a little faster and a little bit less range, like 24 to 75, something like that, instead of having to go all the way to 100. Uh, or even a 24 to 50, something a little tighter, or 20 to 50 and faster, rather than trying to make it go all the way to 100. I think there's some compromises there optically, uh, by trying to make, a 4x zoom lens in such a small camera. It's an ingenious design. If you ever looked at a cutout of a TG7 or TG5, it's really ingenious how they did it. But I'm wondering if they could improve the lens, and that would make a huge difference on the sensor. Then just improve the processing on the sensor in camera, and I think they'll have a winner there. Hi, Robin, everyone. Hope you're all well. I have to say I'm very happy with what I have. Just need to learn more, as Olympus and OM system cameras have so many features, and I 100% agree. I mean, I could I'm content with just about any camera over the last 10 years, to be honest. Even my Pen F, I could probably live with. I would miss the birding aspect of it, being able to capture birds the way I do now with like an OM1, or in my case, the OM3 more often lately. Uh, But yeah, the cameras have been very, very capable for many, many years now, particularly OM Systems, Olympus, with all of the features that they have, the computational features. Because really all they've added computationally since the Pen F even is like the Grad ND and yeah, Live ND and Grad ND. That's really all they've added. We've always had live comp and we've always had in-camera stacking. We've had high-res shot mode since the M5 Mark II and various other things. But uh, yeah, what do we really have? We have in-camera, yeah, we've always had in-camera stacking. So we have live ND, Grad ND. Oh, and handheld high-res shot mode versus just regular high-res shot mode where you need a tripod. And we could get this by Apple, more into computational technologies with artificial intelligence, which will be inside the camera, local processor computation. Yeah, it just requires so much power. And I get it. You know, if you look at cell phones, they have so much power in them and a very similar power requirement to our cameras, right? They're more general purpose processors, but I really don't know what processor technology and fabrication that they're using now in our cameras. I can only guess. But I would guess it's probably not, at least in OM systems, it's not as good as a phone processor, right? Which is very, very competitive. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're just using a Snapdragon or some other processor in our cameras and just repurposing them for photography and video. And here in Singapore, OM3 is basically the same price as OM1. I think if OM1 took out some of the outdoor focus computational features and lowered the price, it'd be great. Um, yeah, maybe, maybe. I would definitely don't mind the higher price to get everything that it has. You know, I paid the $2,000 or whatever for it here, which is the full retail, and I'd much rather do that than have a less capable camera and pay less. For example, the OM5 Mark II. If I had to choose between OM5 Mark II and OM3, let's say they were identical bodies, and I could get the OM5, or we'll call it an OM3 Lite, you know, uh, I would not buy the lesser version, and I don't think that would sell, honestly, quite as well. There would just be too many compromises for most people. The way the camera is now, being as versatile and as capable as it is, I think is one of its main selling points. And taking away anything, I think would hurt sales. But there was definitely a lot of complaints about the price when it came out, and people are like, "This should be a $1,600 camera, not 2,000." I I disagree. I think the 2,000 price point is appropriate uh, for the capabilities the camera has, but I understand I'm in the minority there. Okay, and William says you want a new Tele Prime, a 400 or 500 f4. Oh, that would be interesting. It'll probably be like a Sigma rebrand, right? Or remake. Uh, they have a 500, but I think it's a 5.6. But if they could bring a 500 5.6 in for same price as the 300 f4, that would be very attractive. In my opinion, the best compromise is 25 megapixel sensor with super fast readout so you can achieve handheld high-res shots without any issue for those who need 100 megapixels. Okay, so it depends how the super fast readout is achieved. The M1 Mark III didn't have a stacked sensor, but it had a really good readout speed, whatever that number is. generally speaking, it didn't suffer from rolling shutter as badly as, say, other cameras with larger sensors that were not stacked, like APS-C and full frame. And that's what Panasonic has, basically. They have pretty fast readout speed sensor at 25 megapixels. So if OM systems could do that in a different camera, that would be kind of interesting. But Panasonic does it already, to be honest. Maybe we can make a list of our wants and send it to the home company. I don't know. It They would have to do it themselves. They would have to go out and put out a survey and ask. Us sending it in, I don't think would make, I know they listen to their users and feedback from the community. They have to, or they hire a research firm to do it for them, but they're not going to just take some random survey that we do and send it to them. But hopefully they're watching this and getting a consensus of how that are, at least the viewers on this channel are looking at it. And M43 needs a sensor breakthrough like global shutter with powerful processing to be attractive again. Okay. So that implies that Micro Four Thirds are not attractive now. I'm a big fan of Micro Four Thirds, and I love what they've done so far, and I'm very content with the cameras. So much so I don't have any desire, but maybe I'm in the minority. Because when you look at sales, right, as a percentage or shipments or however you want to look at it, Micro Four Thirds, I think Robin Wong always points out, they're they're in the 1, 2, 3% range of overall camera sales. And that puts me in a minority, right? On that opinion. I think more people would agree with you. Micro Four Thirds is not attractive because of the sensor. And they need some affordable cameras. Cheapest in many shops now is the OM5 II, and that is too much for starters. Yes. So this is, I think, a very strong following uh, with people that OM Systems needs sort of their, entry level camera to get people into the system, right? That was the EM10 or the Pen series for that matter. The Pen series was kind of a niche, I think, and I don't think people that bought a pen were interested in upgrading. They bought the pen because they wanted a pen for its form factor. But the EM10 was definitely an entry level system to get people into the system, right? Entry level camera to get people into the system, and they're certainly lacking that now. Like Canon does that constantly. They have their R100 series. Like they only made that camera so that people will get into the system because it doesn't do anything really that any other camera can't do. It's cheap, made of plastic, no articulating screen, outdated autofocusing system from the previous generation cameras, but it has the R mount and it gets people into the system cheap. I'm not saying it doesn't take great pictures and isn't capable, but it was definitely a get you into the system kind of camera. Same thing with like the R10. That's kind of the next step up from an uh, R100. They also have the R50, and there's probably one other one in there. But these are all sub $1,000 cameras. We're in the $600 price range, give or take. Well, the R10 has gone up. It's up to 1,000 now. I wouldn't pay $1,000 for an R10, that's for sure. But when it first came out and it went on sale, you're able to get an R10 with a kit lens for $899, which was only about $100 more than an EM10 Mark IV with a kit lens. uh, and it was arguably just as capable, right, as an EM10. But anyhow, yeah, it'd be nice to see an OM10 with say a $500 or $600 price point, maybe a $600 or $700 price point with a kit lens, and get people into the system. That's still easily $500-$600 less than an OM5 Mark II with no lens. Uh, and that might drive a lot more new business, I think. And Plato thinks that too much AI will result in too many identical photos that look very artificial. Sure. Um, for now, AI is getting pretty convincing though. Um, and Clint says, since 2020, I've been wanting a replacement rangefinder style body with updated spec. I think I have to settle for retro OM3, and I'm okay with that, I think. Yeah, I don't miss the Pen F when I take out my OM3. I did some birding with it yesterday. This is uh such a capable camera. I can just throw any lens on it and it do anything I want. If I want to do macro, I'll throw my macro lens. If I want to do birding, I'll throw my 300 f4. If I want to do street, I'll throw the 17 or 25 on. Uh, if I want to do event photography, I'll throw the 12 to 40 on. Just that camera will do everything. I don't need it to, it doesn't, there's nothing that camera can't do for me in every genre that I go into. Um, and in terms of body style, I I like the rangefinder, the Pen F, but this is this sort of ticks all the boxes for me in terms of nostalgia and look. I think it's a beautiful camera, and the build quality is right up there with the Pen F. Even better because it's weather sealed. Man, if they come out with a Pen F not weather sealed, that's gonna hurt. Make it a little bigger if you have to, to make it weather sealed. But they're gonna be hurting if they release a non-weather sealed Pen F. Primarily because there's the Fuji, right, is out there. And Anthony says, after investing thousands of dollars in OM system lenses, I do not want to see a new company go out of business because they weren't willing to move forward. Yeah, and that's certainly a concern that many people have is, do we want to invest in a company that could die in a couple of years, right? And not have access to new camera systems and lenses in the future to either expand our current camera system with new lenses or get new camera systems bodies to go with our lenses, right? Either way, that's certainly a concern that many have. And hey, Walter, how are you? Say hi to your lovely wife for me. Could they ever make a computational control system that varies exposure across the sensor to deliver HDR? Uh, I think somebody's doing that now or talked about doing that. Um, I think the way that the current idea is they assign pixels for a certain dynamic range, right? Or certain exposure. So they have this pixel do +2, this pixel do 0, this pixel do -2, and then use the processor to stack those images back together in camera. And and but that's not too different than just bracketing three shots and combining them in camera with the current HDR. But you're talking about trying to do it in a single shot. Uh, I don't know how you can if you take a single pixel and expose it, that's it. You know, that is it. So I think the approach the other sensor was, they had three pixels, each one taking a different exposure, then combining that. I suppose it could be done. It could be done, but not on a pixel for pixel basis. It would have to lose some resolution. Now, the current 20 megapixel sensor is a quad Bayer sensor, so it basically bins 4 pixels together. So it's really an 80 megapixel sensor. Could they somehow manipulate that sensor to do what you're talking about and give us an HDR 20 megapixel? I don't know. It's a little beyond me, but it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to try. Or maybe they're doing it already, and that's the best we can get, even with all of this, because each individual pixel, again, if it's truly an 80 megapixel sensor in our 20 megapixel cameras, each individual pixel is only collecting so much data. Um, so, because the amount of light that hits a sensor is fixed based on aperture and shutter speed. So what they would have to do is for the the -2 exposure, they'd have to turn the pixel off after 2 stops, turn on the 0 exposure pixel, and then turn that off, and then turn on the +2 exposure pixel, assuming we got 3 pixels capturing -2, 0, +2. Interesting. I guess the other idea is that sensor is able to detect how much light is coming in from different parts of the sensor, right? So the sky is very bright, the sun is very bright, so it's going to adjust the exposure on the individual pixels based on the amount of light hitting it. And then, but you would lose control, I think, of shutter speed, right? In particular, where you want a shutter speed of 1/1000th, but you're going to have it set to 1/500th of a second or 1/250th of a second, actually, to do ±2. So it would have to change. It could be done, I think. That would be interesting to vary the exposure pixel per pixel based on the amount of light that hits it. But how would it know until the exposure finishes, right, with the shutter speed? How would it know? They could do it, but it would have to have certain fixed shutter speeds that you could use to achieve that. Not too dissimilar to uh, what do you call it? The super high speed frame rates that we have in our cameras now. We can shoot 100 frames per second with our shutter mode, but our shutter speed's limited to like 1/350th of a second or something, something like that. Uh, yeah, I suppose I'm sure they're thinking about it. If I think it through, because those guys are a lot smarter than me, right? The engineers. They could set have certain amount of fixed shutter speeds that will work with what you're talking about, dynamically reading the individual light coming into a sensor. I suppose it could be done, but it would have to be they'd have to fix somehow the shutter speed and aperture. Yeah, single frame. Yeah. In a single frame, I suppose it could be done. And then Micro Four Thirds sensors are 4 times smaller than full frame, so it should be a great advantage in speed and computational power if tech is on par. And it is. It does have a great advantage in speed and computational power. So we have the 100 frames per second is one. I just mentioned one. We have virtually no rolling shutter in video and in photos. Uh, yeah, those are huge advantages. Yeah, I don't recall a 400 megapixel sensor from Nikon, but maybe. If Canon, not Nikon for 400. Oh yeah, for industrial purposes. And can I ask a question, please? The 45 to 175 Panasonic lens, any thoughts on this lens with regards? Not familiar with that lens. Sorry. Uh, if it's a micro four thirds lens and you're shooting with an Olympus camera, I'd probably just go for the Olympus version, the 40 to 150. Either the kit lens, which is my favorite, or the f4. And computational features could go a long way to lower noise and refine pictures by improving fixing dynamic range limitations that would be cheaper than a new camera sensor combo. Possibly, yes. But again, noise is directly related to the signal to noise ratio. And that's where they have to improve is lower the noise ratio. And Taylor says oh, yeah, PenF is awesome. I have two. I got one as backup in case my primary one ever gets lost or broken. I was thinking about going out with my PenF and my OM3 side by side. And where the OM3 shines really is in the continuous autofocus for birding. But then I could use the PenF for everything else, like my macro. Because, when I go out, there's a local park here, Huntley Meadows. It's a great place for birding and stuff, but also for all the little things, for macro. Uh, it'd be great. Because, a PenF with, say, a 60 macro lens and a kit lens take up no room at all, right? And so it'd be easy to bring that along with my OM3 and 300 f4 together and shoot both without having to swap lenses and be ready for anything. And you're right, the XO is a game changer for M43, especially those who like to do concerts. I see it myself. Yes, it was pretty amazing. So let me take you over to, let me just give you an example. This image here, I took this yesterday, and if we zoom in, really lots of good detail on the bird's eye and beak and the little feathers around that. A little bit of smudging as we go out. There's definitely loss of detail, but there's still a ton here with virtually no noise. This sunflower is a little bit off the focal plane, but parts that are in the focal plane look really good, right? And of course, the background is virtually noise free. Take a guess the ISO on this shot. ISO 10,000. Uh, what's the next one? This one. This one's heavily cropped, but ISO 6400, heavily cropped. This image was cropped down to 1.2, so really about 1.4 megapixels. That's all this image is. This one here, ISO 10,000, again, pretty decent detail. I mean, there's definitely some loss here, like right in here, and a little bit as we go out. You can see a little bit of softness here, but man, that looks great to me. Same thing here. This one is ISO 10,000. Uh, this is a focal plane issue mostly. The focal plane is here and the eye is up here. They're kind of a little bit off. What's this? This is ISO 400, so that doesn't count. But This one, ISO 3200. This one is, I think my shutter speed was a little slow. What was it? No, it was right. That looks pretty good. Not great though. This one here came out really good. Also heavily cropped. This is cropped down to, I don't know, 3 megapixels, um, or three and a half megapixels altogether for this whole frame. Still great detail. Take a guess at the whatchamacallit, ISO. ISO 6400. It's just shocking what DxO can pull out of an image. It does a ton of processing though. Okay, and this translates to any genre of photography. It's a little bit trickier with what you're doing with events, right? Because we're very sensitive as humans to other human faces, and we can easily see artifacts or smudging or softening in people's faces. Uh, it's much more noticeable. But that said, you can still pull a lot of detail out and get really images that would be very difficult to pass off without processing. And Mike says, would like to continue to refresh the fast primes. Yep, a 12 f2, a 45, okay, and a 75. Yeah, I think a lot of people would like that. And Roger says a higher megapixel sensor will mean we need so much more storage. I'm good at 20 to 25. I'm feeling you there, man. When I take out my Sony 60 megapixel sensor, my God, the images, the file sizes, and the processing of those images, and then ultimately, what difference did it make in the final image for putting on Instagram or wherever I share my photos and show people? Um, it's pretty tough. It's impressive though, the detail you can extract out of a 60 megapixel sensor, the detail I can extract out of my Fuji 40 megapixel sensor. But man, dealing with those file sizes, I think 40 would be about my limit. 60 is pretty high. And I would only use it sparingly. Um, Jason says, thanks, great answer. Oh, you're welcome. I don't know if it was me or someone else answered your question, but I always do my best if it was me. Marco's here. Hey, y'all. How are you? And let's see. Uh, and aside from Micro Four Thirds, I'd like to see an XZ3. So a compact camera. That's interesting. I didn't even put that in the survey, but that's a great question. Do we want to see some new compact cameras? I mean, Panasonic has re-released some older compact cameras as new. I mean, I was looking at one of theirs. I forget what model it was, but they wanted $700 for a little compact point and shoot camera. They're out of their mind. I mean, a TG7 with everything that it has, you can get for 500, and that has a bunch of stuff in it. But to go on a 24 to 100, 1.8 to 2.8, okay, so we're looking at an XZ, right? BSI CMOS, which good Wi-Fi, weather resistant, would be perfect travel companion for normal guys without gas who prefer camera instead of phone. Yes, that would be nice. Like if they could release, let's call it a WG7. Well, now we sound like Pentax, or something like the TG7, but a little bulkier, like an XZ with weather sealing, and more manual controls. That's what the TG7 needs is more manual control. An OM3 in black. Yep. A lot of people would like that. A lot of photographers are just looking for new shiny object instead of improving their skills. Yep, I agree with that. I'm one of them, to be honest. I always like new shiny cameras, even if they are 12 years old. I like I just like new cameras having a different experience with the camera. And jamming a high megapixel sensor on a tiny sensor tends to diminish dynamic range and low light capabilities. Yes. The newbie camera market seems to be ignored. New users are weary of used gear. What needs is interchangeable lens, $500 camera. New folks don't worry about me. That would be great. That would be great. Man, if they came out with an OM10 that was 500 bucks, man, that would be awesome. I mean, that's what Canon's doing with the R100. Old autofocus system, plastic body, no articulating screen, nothing. If they came out with an OM, let's call it an OM20. If they came out with an OM20 that was like a rangefinder style and 20 megapixels with nothing in it except some basic art filters and shot raw, that would be awesome. And manual controls, right? That would be awesome. So basically an R100 version, but call it an OM20. And I have the M5 Mark II, no plastic crap, true. I really would like to see them to go back to making all metal cameras. I think Robin is content with the plastic. His argument is hard hats are made out of plastic, but it's not about uh, the practical reasons for using plastic over, say, metal. Uh, it's all about how the camera feels in your hand and the perceived quality of the camera. Most of the complaints I hear online about OM system cameras come from street and travel photographer who feels being forgotten about OM system not bringing out a pen style camera. Yeah, so they're buying the Fujis, right? Or Nikon ZF. I don't think the ZFC sold too well, but the ZF definitely has been a good camera for Nikon. Shooting with gears more than a decade old did an event with a Nikon DF and a 24 to 72.8 and an EM5 Mark II with a 45 Pro for candid shots. I used flash and pictures turned out great with yes. I have the DF. Images are magical out of that. And that's what I mean. Cameras have been great for a long time in terms of image quality. Certainly improvements in on the computational and autofocus, but in terms of pure image quality, uh, really, it's about it's about knowing. It kind of blurs over into the skill set and photography in taking a great image. It's not about the gear so much, but the gear is certainly capable. You were talking about the risk of Olympus going out of business. If that happened, is there enough in the existing system to keep using it? Absolutely. Uh, I don't see if for me, if you know this again, this is a little out of scope, but for me, if OM Systems, close shop tomorrow, I'm still good for a long time. There's still plenty of lenses and gear that I can use with the system that I can buy on the used market to do anything I want. Uh, we don't have weather seal primes as much as I'd like, but We have everything, huge lens selection, and of course, flash and accessories and everything. The cameras work with just about anything anyway. Godox makes great flashes for OM systems. So there's certainly plenty to go for years unless there's some huge shift in sensor technology or processing technology in the next 5 years uh, to make me need to get a new camera. I don't see it. I just don't see anything that this OM3 can't do for me right now. It's just amazing. Not a concern for me. OM was profitable for the first time in years and have great success with multiple bodies at this point. You all need to stop spreading the FUD. It's like you want them to fail. Yes. Um, not sure what FUD stands for, but I get the gist of what you're saying is that, you know, we if OM Systems is profitable, I don't know what the numbers are, but if they are profitable, and I don't doubt it because these cameras are really nice. The OM1 Mark II, the OM3, the new OM5 with that sand beige color. These are beautiful, wonderful, very capable cameras. And anybody that reviews these cameras generally praise them, right? They talk about the limitations, but these limitations in low light and some of the other things that they get into are not limitations for the average person. The average person is not trying to shoot in a cave all the time. Uh, like I just saw one, a guy, I forget his name. His name was Ian. They sent him an OM1 Mark II to try out. He's a landscape photographer, and he really liked it. He loved the live ND and the graduated ND filter built in, and liked the high res shot mode. He really liked the camera, and I think he's going to do maybe another video on it. But he just published one a couple of days ago, and he really liked the camera. And he's been a Fuji shooter. He shoots an XH2. Uh, Granted, it was a sponsored video, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But he seemed sincere when he said he liked the images. At this point, it isn't enough just improving one part or doing one strategy. Well, I think unfortunately, uh, OM System is just too small. I mean, this is my perception. They're just too small a company to take any risks and expand and do a lot of things at once. Um, so I appreciate that they came out with one really amazing camera. Just one really good one. I prefer this over, say, just dumping out a bunch of mediocre cameras. I just don't think they're in a position to throw out multiple cameras. And how's my injury doing? I'm okay. I'm still itchy and, you know, all these little stings everywhere. I don't know if I got the stinger out on this one or not. It's still a little bit swollen. In my chest, it's still bruised. I still have a hard time getting up and down, but it's tempered quite a bit. There was early on, it was really painful. Now it's just, now I can get up and down without, screaming in pain, but I'm all right. Okay. Let's see. At this point, it isn't enough just, and then my comments are banned. I'm not banning anything. I banned certain words, but they were like cuss words and things. I don't think I banned anything. Maybe just rephrase what you were trying to say if it didn't go through. Uh, if the cover panels on the inside of the OM3 improved over the OM5, my 3 have all come open all the time on mine EM5 or 3 when I take them out of the bag. So I assume you're referring to the memory card door, the battery door. This I'm having trouble with. The the eyepiece. Man, that comes off way too easy. When I have the camera resting against my hip or something, I've knocked this off a couple of times. Luckily, I've always found it, but I've knocked this off a couple of times. That's the only thing I'm having trouble with. If you're talking about these, not so much. Um, I would say they're not any better though. So I'll say it this way. I'm not having any problems other than the eyepiece, but I'll also add that I don't think there's been any improvement. They feel just exactly the same. So if you're having problem with your OM5, it's very likely you'll have problem with this one as well. If you're talking about these cover panels. I have a half grip on mine that may be tempering some of the issues with taking it out of the bag, but um, I'll put it as close to the camera as I can so you can see. There's a little bit of a lip there. That's all I can do for you. There's the battery door. Then I'm sorry, the memory door and then the battery door. These are all the same. Okay. All right, so uh let me get through a couple of things here. The computational stuff, some people brought up they'd like to see grain, HSL sliders, and film presets. That would be nice. It'd be nice if they could add in firmware uh adjusting the individual hue of the colors of the individual colors. Just being able to adjust the saturation is nice. But they've been doing that since the Pen F 10 years ago. It'd be nice if they could include a hue saturation or a hue adjustment to each individual color. In addition to that, being able to use grain on the color instead of just black and white, that could be easily added. And then they have all the art filters. The film presets are like the vintage 1, 2, and 3, and then also the grainy film. So they have 5 film presets already. But they've been using these for the last 10 or 15 years. Create some new film presets. Like they did add bleach bypass some years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago. But that's the only new one they've added. If they could add some more film presets, uh, in firmware, because Fuji does, they've added a couple, right? Eterna was added and some other ones. I haven't updated the firmware on my Fuji, but I know there's some new presets uh, that I would get if I did. But yeah, I agree. So that was a great suggestion. And maybe bring back the scene modes. Like Robin brought up an oldie but a goodie, but the Starry Night, Starry Sky feature that used to be in the scene modes on our older Olympus cameras. That would be nice to have back. Um, and as far as camera bodies, I've mentioned the OM10. I think an OM20. How about an OM20, man? Like a really entry level camera. That would be something. Like, the Pen series was a little bit pricey because they cost as much as an EM10. So I would say an OM20, an OM10, some compact cameras, similar to like the GM1. That would be an interesting way to expand the lineup. And bring back the pen series, like the pen EP7 or whatever with the mode dial on it. That's a nice little camera. Just make it a little better build quality. People say it's kind of flimsy. I've never held one, but uh yeah, tiny camera, really compact, GM1 style, and OM20, OM10, the pen line, and maybe a new XZ2 or 3. That would be great ways to expand if they could. Okay, autofocus and video performance. The only challenge I think with the autofocus in the OM system cameras is the tracking. You know, the little green box that tracks shape and color, right? So I could put any object, like maybe this lens in front of it, put the autofocus point on it, and then track it. This is an area that, OM systems, Fuji even, are really struggling with. Nikon, Canon, Sony are pretty good at that. Not perfect. None of them are perfect. But, the tracking autofocus is virtually unusable for anything that moves with any kind of speed. Now, it's improved a lot with the OM3. I haven't compared it against my OM1 Mark 1, but like an EM5 Mark 3 or older, man, forget it. If it's moving with any speed at all, man, your camera's not going to track it, even if it's moving slowly, right? It's much better, but if the background, like if I move the lens over here in front of other lenses, it might start picking up on that lens over there. I can't, this lens. If I overlap, it might get stuck on that lens and not track this one anymore. So tracking is the biggest improvement they need to do with the autofocus. But everything else, the autofocus seems very, very competent. And and I'm talking about specifically the eye tracking for humans versus, say, my Sony and Canon. I really don't see that much difference. All of them miss a little bit. They all miss a little bit sometimes. And the OM3, in fact, focuses in low light better than my Sony. The Sony, man, if you drop the light, golly, that thing will not focus. I got so many missed shots in a studio shots. I did some studio work a couple of weeks ago, and it missed so many shots because we were just using the modeling lamps off the light modifiers, off the lighting. And that camera would not focus on the person's face. My Sony is so frustrating. And I had at least a dozen missed focus shots with a Sony. So, and I know my OM5, I'm sorry, my OM1 and OM3 would have no problem with that lighting. I've done it so many times in that lighting where I was just using the modeling lights through a giant umbrella and it would lock right on. It missed sometimes, but the Sony wouldn't focus at all. It would give me false positives. It was crap. Anyway, but not, this is not about Sony. This is about for OM systems, the tracking needs to be improved. That's where just about everyone else outperforms them. Even the Fuji tracks a little better than my OM systems. Uh, as far as video specs, I'm not really a video guy, but they're not anywhere near Panasonic level of video in terms of the overall quality of the video. It's more than good enough for what I do, honestly, and for what probably 99% of the people would do. And that's probably why they didn't focus on it. But that said, video is definitely an area they can improve on in terms of the overall quality of the image and color science and tools to use for video. Maybe even do 4K 120 with autofocus or uh, something, right? do 4K 120 with autofocus, and have good quality. Okay, that's that. And then another thing some of you brought up in the comments in that survey was about improving the apps. Definitely the OI Share app, I'd like it has very good control now and it's pretty reliable. Yeah. But you really need more control over all of the different settings in the camera. Right now you can only access like PASM and take a picture, but you don't have access to like in-camera stacking and all of the other. You have to tether the camera to do that. And half the cameras don't tether. The OM5 doesn't tether, the uh, EM5 didn't tether, the Mark III. Certainly the EM10 Mark IV didn't tether, and uh, my OM3 doesn't tether. You know what I mean? So it'd be nice to have more control over all of the computational features and everything the camera can do rather than just the basic pictures and video. Another thing they can improve in the app is being able to register more than one camera at a time. It is such a pain to use the app with this camera and then use the app with the OM1. Uh, so I'll give you a use case, right? My OM1, which is it's out because I was shooting with it this morning. But I use that camera primarily for my work, right? I did a shoot last week and I had to re-register the camera with the app. And then, because I save all of my settings in the app, right? All of my custom settings in the app. So I was doing a particular job, so I wanted to load the settings that I use for that particular job into the camera. And I had to re-register the camera to load those settings in. Now, if I want to go back and I want to reload the settings that I have for my OM3, I have to disable the OM1 and re-register the OM3 and then load the settings that I have, custom settings that I've made for this camera, which I'm going to definitely make a video about my custom settings uh, because I'm using this camera so much now, I have pretty much down what I like to use it for, and I'm going to share that with you, my custom settings and all of that, so that hopefully you can get more out of the camera and enjoy it more. Uh, so yeah, I think these are kind of not priority items that I'm talking about, but I just want to get into all of the things that we want as users. Definitely, the mobile app needs a big improvement in terms of being able to register multiple cameras, not just one at a frickin' time. That is a pain because I'm a multi-camera user like many of us, and it is a pain. Like now, if I want to go to my Pen F, like I was talking about taking the OM3 and the Pen F out at the same time, and I'm going to use different settings on both cameras, and I want to be able to load them up quickly. And if I want to use one camera remotely with the app, I'd like to have more control and access to all of the different features. We talked about lenses a little bit. The rumored 50 to 200 f2.8 with built-in teleconverter, that would be nice. That would be nice. And cost half as much as the 150 to 400 because it's half the focal length effectively, right? But you gain speed going to f2.8 instead of f4.5. You gain more than a stop. So I think there's a lot of interest in that lens. I'm a little curious though, because Panasonic has a 50 to 200. I think that's like an f2.8. But it's discontinued. They're not selling it anymore. So does that mean it didn't sell well? I don't know. I think a lot of people would buy that, especially like event photographers. Man, an event photographer would love a fast 50 to 200 f2.8. That is the perfect range for doing events. When you're not walking around taking portraits of people like couples and individuals sitting at a table, but we're talking about stage events, particularly staged events like dances and bands and theater, and doing other speaker type events where they're on a podium. 50 to 200 would be freaking perfect at f2.8. Um, I guess my last notes here are, or the last few comments about, OM Systems needs to expand their philosophy and innovation, right? Which we've been talking about for the past hour and a half, uh, in terms of their technology, right? Like I mentioned, the um, I mentioned the color wheel in the Pen F. It's the same. It hasn't changed. It's the same. They put that in OM3, so they're using a 10-year-old uh 10-year-old color wheel. The this whole creative dial. This creative dial is 10 years old. It was in the Pen F 10 years ago. Absolutely no improvement at all. I'm happy they ported it over to this and reintroducing it to people, but why couldn't they have expanded on that a little bit? Add more art filters, film simulations to the art filter, uh, you know, bin. And the OM3 did try to regain some of the street photographers that was mentioned earlier. Because if you looked at the marketing and advertising for that, they specifically targeted street photography and everyday type photography, not just sports action wildlife. And certainly the camera's form factor doesn't lend itself to sports action wildlife. I can tell you because the palm of my hand is paying for it with the script that I got for it. This is pretty painful here. I got to do something about this. Because otherwise the camera's great at sports action wildlife, but not having a grip, it's a little bit painful. But yeah, I think if they could, I get they wanted to focus on one thing and drive their profitability in a specific niche, and that's how they were able to drive their profitability. And if expanding and taking risk in other genres like they are with the OM3, I think proves that they can go into street photography, portrait photography, landscape photography, whatever genre, outside of just sports action wildlife, right? Being super weather sealed and all of that. They can expand to easily street photography. The OM3 is probably an everyday street camera for a lot of people than it is, sports action wildlife. And I think the success of this, and that it's my perception, I don't have any hard data, but this camera's been very successful for them and proves that they can do it. So I'd like to see them expand their their overall philosophy and marketing to other genres. That would be nice. And that's where I'll leave it. So let's see what the survey says today. I wonder if I can access that. Let's see. So the survey now is 83 votes, 39%, oops, close. 39% want more resolution, 24 megapixel or higher stack sensor. 29% want to expand the lineup. 24% improve native image quality, dynamic range, autofocus video. and only 8% on improved and new computational features. Wow, that's pretty, this only 83 votes, but that's a lot smaller than I expected. But, 39%, that's a pretty high number. So it seems like a lot of people do want more resolution. That's interesting. But we have to understand the context of that. Is it because you want to see OM systems be competitive so that they can survive, or is it because you really want and need 24 megapixels? So that's kind of a different question that can't really be addressed from this one. It's always in the nuances, right? When you ask a question, well, what's the motivation behind that answer? Is the motivation to make the OM system competitive, or is it because you really need 24 megapixels? I don't know. That's a different question. And Robert's here. Good to see you. And because I live in an area where I'm surrounded by wildlife and wilderness, a natural lean into purchasing equipment suitable for wildlife genre, unlike someone who lives in the city. Yes. Yeah, where Anthony lives gets very, very cold. So performance in cold weather, wearing winter clothes and gloves, definitely are going to place a very high priority on the ergonomics of the camera and durability. And T-Dub says, my Canon's R5 HDR mode is pretty good. I'm just too lazy to mess with it often and primarily shoot wildlife and birds. Okay, I'm not familiar with the HDR in the Canon. Jan says, expand a bit its camera lineup and also lenses in order to make for the lack of third-party lens development, improve video a lot, more computational features. Yep, I would love all of that. And that's, I think the majority of the world's photographers live in highly populated areas of the world where street photography and travel photography is the main genre, and they want smaller, lighter cameras like the Pen F. Definitely. I mean, if you look at all the major population centers of the world, you never hear the North Pole, right? You hear London, Paris, New York, California, these kind of areas. And just sent you a photograph of juvenile sparrow, which I developed with DxO Pure Off. I do the rest of editing and photometry. It was emailed. Okay, I'll take a look. And XMeta, can you try some high ISO stunts with K3 and DxO2? I'm barely going above. Yeah. Uh, I have to look. I have to look. I may have already done some, but I don't recall. So I'm shooting at such a wide angle. I bought that 8 to 16, right? Wide angle lens. So I can keep my shutter speeds pretty low. Let me just skim real quick and see if there's anything. K3, ISO 200, ISO 100, 100. Let's see, if I go up a little bit, ISO 200. Yeah, I have not taken anything high ISO with that camera. How about this one, ISO 100? Yeah. Okay, I have to make an effort. It's not something I've done at this point. Okay. Because I don't intentionally go out and shoot high ISO. I'm using flash, right? As you can see, like my K3 has this little f2 light. I love this little flash. Uh, I'm always using lighting or shooting in good light. I haven't taken it out in low light. I did take one, I think. I'll try and pull it up and I'll bring it up in a few minutes. Let me get to some other chat while Photolab is loading. And And Eric, oh hey Eric, says waiting a new debit card to come in the mail. Close my Truist account and open a new account to stop all billing and say death by a thousand cuts. Getting wrecked by yeah. That's one way to go about it. And Sixtus asks, won't a 60 megapixel sensor run into diffraction issues even at f8? Um, yeah. So that's the other thing, right? Is there's certain optical physical physics related optical challenges to increasing decreasing the pixel pitch on a camera to say 60 megapixels. I have to think about that consciously. Even with 20 megapixels, you're kind of starting to hit it at f8. It's not really noticeable. F11, you can definitely see it. F16, you can definitely see a big drop in image quality with micro four thirds as it is. Uh, and you can see it somewhat at f11 on a full frame sensor, certainly by f16. But even at f8 on a micro four thirds, you can kind of see it sometimes, not always, but sometimes. Depends on the focal length and all these other factors, right? But it says I'll be signing up for DxO when it comes. Already seeing Adobe going billing failed gives the alert middle finger. How much is the latest DxO 100? So uh, let's talk about this on Tuesday. Okay, DxO. We'll talk. We'll talk. Maybe I'll send you an email. Uh, okay, and some agencies have refused taken with a camera 24 megapixels below resolution, which is steering a lot of micro four thirds away. But how many people are really working with agencies, right? OMSIS is not targeting professional photographers that work with agencies. So I don't know how many more sales they'll get if they go to 24 megapixels for people that have agencies. I know Jimmy Chang talked about it a couple of years ago when he bought a GH6. He said he bought that because the agencies just weren't taking 24 megapixels, less than 24. But that's got to be a small number. Um, but agencies, it just depends on the client because clients, a lot of times, if you're doing if you're doing professional work, you know, the, I don't have any clients like this. I deliver my images at 2 megapixels, maybe three on the high end. But there are clients that want to have, say, a picture of a product and be able to slice and dice and crop and put those up on billboards or show it online or do it in print magazines. They need all different kinds of ways to market whatever picture that you give them. And it requires a certain number of megapixels from for them to use to be able to do that. So I don't know. But that can't be too many people. I can't imagine too many high-end photographers. But I don't know. I don't know that market. I don't know that market that well. Upgrading my gaming laptop with larger, faster RAM and larger, faster M2 storage has made DxO Photolab 8 excellent, faster process. Oh, awesome. Yeah, upgrading RAM and hard drive to SSD is amazing. Makes a huge difference. For a long time, the SSD was the biggest improvement in the computer world in improving the performance of your computer, second only to increasing the RAM. Because I know my mom's old computer, she had an old hard drive in there that it came with. I changed it to an SSD, and that thing is fast for what she does, which is, browsing the internet uh, for the most part. Plastic versus metal. My K20D looks better after many years of daily use than the K5, but it must be glass fiber reinforced polymer, not cheap ABS plastic like kitchen needs. Yep. Uh, this K3 is just kind of painted. Well, that feels metal. The flash is plastic. I assume, yeah, this is metal. I don't know. Okay. Um, I don't know. I have no idea, but OM System has to invest in name recognition. Yeah, I think they're trying. They have a really good presence on YouTube and Instagram, but yeah, they need more. Any loss of clients that bought cameras from OM System in the past is not good news for OM System revenue. I think it's important for them to bring out 24 megapixel sensor or higher. Okay. I don't know if they see it that way. Uh, if it were me, if I were running OM systems, I wouldn't care about the people that need 24 megapixels because of an agency, you know? I would do 24 megapixels if the perception of our company is not improving. That's a different thing altogether than losing customers because some of them have agencies that require 24 megapixels. I just can't imagine I would care. I wouldn't care about that at all because that's not their focus, right? Their focus is sports action wildlife. So I'm very happy with the Mark II. Is more than enough camera for me. Took a photograph. Oh, sorry. Amazing. I just want to see all systems improve. Yeah. I know where you're coming from. Fear of uncertainty and doubt, industry term. Yes, absolutely. So now that I understand a little better the context of the last statement, yeah, I don't worry about it. I don't worry about them going out of business. I just assume that they're going to be around for a long time. And if they make good cameras, I'm going to buy the camera if they make cameras I like. I don't let the fear of them, any system, anything I buy, say, gee, uh, I could buy this now, but they're not going to be around tomorrow. I would not worry about it. Uh, Now, the biggest concern might be to the warranty repair and stuff like that. That could be an issue, right? Where are you going to get your camera fixed under warranty? But even then, I don't really worry about it. The cameras have been very good and reliable. I don't, you know, I don't know what to say. I don't. I agree with Marco. Don't succumb to fear unnecessarily. If they make a camera you like, just buy it. You'll be okay. It's going to be a great camera. I mean, people's biggest fears, I think, are about buying poor quality cameras, right? Buying a camera that doesn't do what you need it to do. That's a bigger problem than buying a camera and they go out of business, in my opinion. You know, anyhow, why did my chat jump all the way up again? I'm sorry. Let me just go to the bottom, work my way up. And yes, it's K3 is light metal alloy, except the flash. Okay, yeah, that feels like it because my is the camera metal or not? My test is I just kind of feel it on my skin. Yep, that's metal. That's metal. That's plastic. Maybe that's been discussed already. I personally want a successor to the M1X, maybe an OM-X or OM1X or something similar, built-in grip, latest features. Yeah, you're very much in the minority, I think, though, based on the survey. But you and Anthony would be best buddies. I know that. And the OM1, the EM, what was, yeah, it was the EM1X. I thought it was a great camera. I'll never buy it. It's just not something I want. But it's a great camera. And a lot of people that have that camera love it. But I think it's just a little bit too niche. More than 24 megapixels is mostly just product photo and fashion. First is solved by high-res multi-shot. Second, like medium format or A7 or 5. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of choices out there. If you need 24 megapixels or more, then you're going to buy another brand. Does it take you out of the Micro Four Thirds system completely? Maybe if that's all you do in your photography, but that's not all we do, right? I don't know. Jimmy didn't switch out of OM systems. He still uses it quite a bit. And then for his other jobs, he uses this GH6 or whatever other camera he has. Um, so I just don't see OM systems. People that buy an OM system camera usually stick to it, I think, and really love them. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't run into. I just haven't run into it too much. I do hear about it time to time. That I used to shoot with my EM10, but I switched to Sony. I do hear that time to time, but most of the time I hear, yeah, I love my own system cameras. I bought a Sony. I want to try it, and it's a good camera. Or in my case, I bought Pentax, Fuji, Canon, Nikon. But uh, OM system is still my primary camera system. And Stefan, good to see you. Better late than never, right? Since I bought my DxO Luminar Neo and Helicon focus programs during November Black Friday. The savings are substantial. Yes, Black Friday is always the best time to buy stuff. And I hope all OMCs listening to your channel, taking the comments from their customer who care about assisting, they choose to use yes. I know in the past they used to watch my stuff. I don't know about now. And also 10 stop ND fit tell. Oh, sorry, I missed the first part of this. I'd like to see a 27 to 30 megapixel sensor. A phone can shoot higher megapixel on system camera. Why not? An infrared computational feature would be nice too. Oh, that's interesting. Infrared computational. I wonder if that could be done. That's and yeah, 10 stop ND would be nice. They probably just need a faster processor, right? An EM1 camera was cutting edge technology for a camera back in the day compared to a lot of their competition. Yes, they've definitely are not leading like they used to in terms of features and, in terms of features, right? Capability. Yeah, it was a smaller sensor, but you could do A, B, C, and D with this camera that you could not do with a DSLR. Absolutely. And then when the mirrorless cameras started coming out, there were still a lot of things that OM system cameras could do that other mirrorless system cameras could not. But at this point in time, everybody is caught up in terms of features, even though the execution is terrible, in my opinion. High-res shot mode and Fuji and Sony, forget it. I'll never do it. But technically, they have it. Pre-capture, pro-capture, pre-burst, whatever you want to call it. A lot of cameras have that now. So certainly, when you look at OM systems, you're like, they don't they're not way ahead with multiple features anymore like they used to be. They used to have multiple things you could do in an OM system camera that you could never do in other cameras, but that's not the case anymore. On paper, in practice, yeah, I would still much rather use my OM system camera for high-res shot and other things, pre-capture. It's much more flexible and much better executed in the OM system cameras than it is in any other system, in my opinion. Uh, but yeah, I think we would like to see we would like to see that gap spread again, where it's like, wow, you can do five things in an OM system camera that you could not do in a mirrorless any other mirrorless system, and that's just not the case anymore. It'd be nice to see that again, though. And I think back in the past, the OM camera division benefited from the trickle-down effect from the medical and scientific divisions, where a lot of leading-edge technology came from. Possibly, I don't know for a fact, but certainly the financial backing and research and development, there were probably a lot more resources there than there is now. And for me, the perfect event lens is 35 to 150, 2.8 to 2 to 2. Oh yeah, the Tamron. Yep. This has no equivalent micro four thirds. Either the range or speed is lacking. Well, yeah. The closest thing we have now is probably the 40 to 150, 2.8. Oh, well, that's not even close to 35. I gotta think in crop factor. The 12 to 100 f4 is about the closest, but that's like two stops difference on top of a two-stop difference in sensor size. So it's not even close. They would have to come out with a something like a 17 to like a 17 to 75 f2, but that would be a honking lens. Panasonic has what? A 10 to 25 f1.8. That's what, a 20 to 50. That's yeah. And you see how big that is. That's a huge honking lens. But I think there's a lot of challenges because the pixel density on Micro Four Thirds is so small. You'd have to make the lens four times better than Tamron to be able to resolve a 20 megapixel sensor, or have at least enough resolve to make the lens considered high quality pro. Yeah, yeah, Anthony, you and the other guy was talking about an EM1X would be. I just don't think they have the bandwidth to do it financially or in terms of R&D. Apparently, the original Pen F cannot be weather sealed and is expensive to make. I think they could bring out a weather sealed style Pen F if they're willing. Uh, you have to add to that willing and able. I just don't think they're able to do it. They don't have the bandwidth financially. And finance, right? Financially, they have to have the financial bandwidth so they can do more research and development to make a Pen F. Is there a posterizing effect? That's technically a film effect of the. Ah, not really. They don't have that. And Thomas says, Ian Worth, UK landscape, he and his follow UK YouTuber Henry Turner are recent occasional converse. Oh, okay. Yeah, I watched one other video from Ian a long time ago, but his thumbnail popped up yesterday or today. I don't remember. Recently, his thumbnail popped up about OM systems, him using an OM system camera. So I watched it. It was really good. And they're the same panel open sometimes from the next strip. Really? Gosh, I've never had problems with my my panels opening up. Uh, and Marsh says I have both the OM one, Mark one, and Mark two. So far, no problems of any kind. Yeah, so I guess that's in reference to the side panels. No, the rubber panels on the side open all the time. Yeah, there's no change there. Definitely. If you had OM System OM1 Mark II and a good range of lenses, they would last years no matter what happens to the company. I wouldn't worry about the company's lifespan, aside from warranty, right? So, and repairs. I think that's probably the biggest issue. Now, if they said, okay, we're not going to make any more cameras and we're going to service people's stuff for the next 5 years, that would be nice, but I doubt it. Once somebody wants to close down, that's it. They'll say, okay, for the next 90 or, next 90 or 100 days, we'll service anything, but then that'll be it. But I wouldn't worry about it. They'll be around for a while. All right, awesome. Um, Stephen says, I've been making a living off two EM1X bodies for a few years now, and I'm very happy with its capabilities. I know it's all about the size and weight with MFT, but still. Yeah, like I said, I mean, you and Anthony, man, you guys are would love an EM1X. Anthony for its ergonomics in cold weather climates, and battery life, of course, because you got the dual battery system built right in. I bought a grip for my OM1, but I've never used it. I keep forgetting about it. But next event I do, I'm gonna have to use it. I'll get some more event jobs, like around the holidays, but uh let's see. And the 12 millimeter addition to the new weather sealed 12 and 25 primes would be great. Yes. That 12 millimeter is awesome. I sold it because I have a 12 to 40 Pro and I was like, I needed the money for buying another something. I think I traded it. Yeah, I traded the 12, among other things, the 12 millimeter to get this 300 F4 Pro. Because, I just had too much overlap. The 12 to 40 Pro does everything I need for event photography and portrait work, you know. So I rarely use my 45 1.8 anymore or my 17, but I still really like my 25 Leica f1.4. I will use that because that's a full 2 stops brighter than the 12 to 40. So when I do need better low light capability, I'll switch over to a prime, but not very often. Usually at events and portraits, I'm using flash, so I don't need f1.8 or f1.4. I need f5.6, and the 12 to 40 Pro is perfect. The 12 to 100 would be even better. I just can't bring myself to pay and use a 12 to 100 just for the occasional events that I do. Right, so I think the jury's out. That's what we want, right? Those are the things we want, poem systems. It was everything we talked about. And I'm sure none of that is news to them, right? And they're prioritizing. But if we had to give one message, it seems like let's prioritize more megapixels because it's at least one third from the previous surveys, 35%. Prioritize image quality computational features, and then expand the range from there. It seems like expanding the range of cameras was kind of the lowest in all of the surveys. It'd be nice to have additional cameras, but if you're going to expand the range, I would say start with an OM10 or even smaller, an OM20, an OM20 or an OM10. What do you guys think about my OM20 idea, where it's like super basic, a super basic, super cheap, like 499 camera with lens? That would be awesome. I don't know if they could ever get the OM10 down to 499, but an OM20, 499, like no flip screen, basically an R100 with a micro four thirds sensor and micro four thirds mount. That would be awesome. And you could get people in for 299, 399 with an OM20. Throw in maybe one computational feature like live comp. with the OM20 because that's something nobody else does right now that I know of. Maybe Panasonic, but nobody else. So that would be X-Meta says an OM100. That's funny. And then after you drop the OM20, if you're going to expand the range, the XZ3, man, a new super awesome compact camera. Because the XZ2 is such a great compact camera. If they could just re-release that, even it would do great, I think. But uh, yeah, I don't know. I think an OM20. The Great Vanzini says, I love the OM20. Man, and come out with different colors like sand beige. Come out with some different colors with an OM20 in a variety of colors. And uh, same 20 megapixel sensor like in the EM10, but throw in some computational features. 'Cause that would rock. I mean, throw in like live ND, but nothing else. You know, do whatever to keep the cost down. Give it a USB-C port. Give it a few different colors: red, white, blue, gold, beige. You know, like Pentax used to do, and Nikon used to do with their old entry-level DSLRs. I'll never forget those red D50 something hundred cameras. I wanted one. I don't know why. Or a white Pentax. That would be cool. Yeah, and off to a soccer match. Awesome. Full use of the M1X Pro Capture mode. Yeah. Enjoy, man. Yeah, the XC2 price on secondhand market is growing. Even ugly ones do sell. I know I bought mine for like $100 a few years ago. I don't know what they're asking now, 300. It's crazy. So anyhow, we'll call it here. So thanks everyone for participating in the survey, joining me today on the live stream, and I'm running the streams ad-free. Uh, so I have all the links down below to help keep the streams ad-free this month. I did it last month, all ad-free, and I really appreciate the support everyone showed me through the super chats and the donations and new memberships using my affiliate links. All of that came together to where I feel like I kind of broke even. Like I lost a little, obviously I lost substantial amount on advertising revenue, but it was kind of made up for in these other things. I don't have a precise number, but I looked at the numbers again last night, and I feel like I did about the same with and without the ad. Uh, but that's the first month. The first month is always where a lot of people, my most loyal, most favorite fans, right, will support. But I'd like to see how this goes for another month of just, with anyone that's new to my channel, things like that. Subscribe, like, of course, comment. But yeah, all of your support is greatly appreciated. I want to thank everyone that supported me last month for the ad-free stream, and I hope to be able to continue that uh, from now on. But I'm going to do this month to month and see how it goes in terms of running my streams ad-free. Uh, so far, I'm very happy with the support I've been shown. So thank you so much, everyone. And I'll be back on Tuesday. So till then, have a great day, a great rest of your week. Eat healthy, exercise. I want to be with you guys for a long time. So thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see you again soon.